Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the P-LotPodcast. John here, joined once again by the main man himself, Michelangelo. Michael, how we doing, man?
We're doing good. We're doing good. You know, conference finals wrapped up in hockey. They are wrapping up in the NBA. Um, Baseball is really just fully knee deep into it as we're entering June tomorrow. And, some minor football moves being done, being talked about before June 1st as, stuff being designated as post June 1st transactions in order for teams to save some extra money here or there. The typical stuff going on in the football world. So yeah, good time.
Yeah, man. It's we're about to shift into the like as a lot of people call it, the dog days of summer when it comes to sports. So it's just going to be baseball, man. It's going to be baseball, football training camp, and
Hmm.
NBA, NHL offseason. And, well, uh, Flyers have a big offseason coming up, and as well as the Sixers. So we're not, don't have a lot. We're going to talk. We have a lot to talk about later in the summer, but I want to focus on the right here and now. Now, obviously, you just mentioned the conference finals in both sports. Knicks Pacers game 6 in Indiana. Man, I think that's going to be a great game. Uh, Knicks looked really good the other night, but the Pacers hung around for a while. Uh, not gonna question Pascal Siakam like Greg, that weirdo Greg.
Yeah, that weird indie star reporter,
It's like banned from covering
the Fever.
the
Yeah,
Fever because it's
weird,
weird.
weird guy, weird guy. But
Yeah, it's totally weird. But
yeah, and Siakam giving the normal, like very normal standard answer when you get outplayed pretty much throughout the entire game. Where it's like, yeah, like they were better. They you know wanted it more. Like that sort of just very classic cliche sort of post game presser. And him asking like, well, what do you mean? Like why? He was like,
what do you
what
mean?
are you
Why?
talking? What do you mean? Yeah, what do you mean? What do I mean? Like it's what happened. You watched the game. And the guy
Like,
said, "Well,
like
how
what
does
is
that happen?
like? Yeah, like come
What
on,
do you
like
mean? How does that happen? Like
what
it
do you
just
want? Like, yeah, what do you want him to say? Oh, they made more shots than us. Like, no, duh. Like
he
that's like
wants him to. Does he want him to say like, oh yeah, we like when he says like, oh, they outplayed him, and it's like, well, how? He wants him to say like, oh yeah, we weren't giving it all. We knew we have a few cracks to finish this series. Like, is that what he wanted him to say? Like, I don't really understand, but yeah, definitely one of those classic. You're down 3-1, game five at home. You put up a big fight in front of the home crowd, and the Pacers kind of, I think they went into that game feeling that same energy and are going to certainly be looking to close it out on home floor tonight in game six.
yeah, like I feel exactly. But yeah, and you know, I don't want to be like a Debbie Downer, but man, I feel like maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like whoever the Thunder play, either one of those two teams, it's going to be Thunder in 5, Thunder in 6.
Yeah, the Thunder are very, very good. And it's like they should be steamrolling their way to a championship, kind of like the Celtics did last year. And it got hairy. It certainly got hairy in that Nugget series, where essentially they just choked away a couple games where it's like they kind of outplayed them and then they just totally collapsed at the end. And it almost did them in. Like it almost
Yeah,
ruined
and remember
what
they
they
had
had
that
going on.
long layoff.
Right. And it's, that those were some tough that was a tough series where they were so clearly the better team, but it just guys weren't playing as good as they could have. And then,
Well, like
this.
you had the layoff, but like Jokic and Murray were playing extremely well.
Yeah,
They
and
might
Aaron
be.
Gordon, like I don't know, they weren't getting good games from their guys, the Thunder, if that is. They were getting inconsistency from Shea, very much inconsistency from Jalen Williams. And, you know, they were able to get out of that one, which that seemed like the biggest test. And then, the Timberwolves are just not a good matchup for the Thunder. They can just kind of blitz Anthony Edwards and get the ball out of his hands and make, a combination of Julius Randle and a bunch of other role players try to beat them on the offensive end. And they'll take that every day of the week. And they just kind of ran away with it. Shea was incredible the whole series. And they should win the finals. It shouldn't matter who they play. They should win the finals. I will say that the Pacers are definitely more equipped to put up a better fight. I feel like the Knicks playing the Thunder, if they do somehow come back from down 3-1 and win the series, I do think the Knicks would get beaten up pretty badly. I think defensively, the Thunder would just put them in literal
Yeah,
hell.
and look, Rick Carlisle, the coach of the Pacers, I think is a very good coach. So
Yeah, I think the Pacers are definitely more equipped to battle. You're going to need Tyrese Halliburton, great player. His issue is that he's a little passive at times. It's kind of like Harden-ish, where like late post Rockets Harden, where if it wasn't his day, like the first couple shots didn't go in, he just kind of wouldn't shoot for like it feels like 2, 3 quarters for just almost no reason. And Halliburton kind of does that same sort of thing where he was like 0 for 1 by the end of the first quarter and then didn't seem to shoot again till like the third. It was kind of ridiculous. And if he's going to get in that mode where they're not going to give him easy looks and he's just going to be very quick to defer to his teammates, the Thunder are going to just harass him, picking him up at half court, not letting him breathe, and say, "Go ahead. If we're gonna lose because Aaron Nesmith and Andrew Nemhard and Miles Turner are both gonna average or all three are gonna average like 18 points a game because they just keep making all their threes, by all means, have at it. If Siakam's gonna average 40 a game, by all means, have at it. We're not gonna let Halliburton get cooking where he's scoring 30 points and 15 assists, where he's creating everything for them, and it's very hard to stop when Halliburton's really in that zone, as we saw, in Game 4, especially of this conference final. So I'm rooting for the Pacers. I'd root for the Pacers to honestly win the whole thing as well. But the Thunder, it would be a real travesty for the Thunder if they weren't able to pull this off, especially with the whole second apron thing. Like this window is not going to be as open as maybe it should be, even though all their players are really young, just because of how the second apron works. But they definitely need to cash in on this one. It's one of the best, like in terms of analytically and statistically, they're one of the best teams like ever assembled.
and then when we go to hockey, uh, Panthers Oilers rematch of last year. That series went to 7 games after the Oilers were down 3-0. They brought it back 3-3, and then unfortunately they
It was a
lost in Game
greasy one in Game
7.
7. Yeah,
Yeah,
a good series.
yeah. So definitely that's going to be fun to watch as well. Connor McDavid might be the greatest athlete of all time when you factor in how good he is in the playoffs to like not have a championship yet, and that could be
It could
ending
change
very
in
soon.
a couple weeks. Yeah, yeah, for sure. But the one thing we did want to touch on in regards to hockey, and we're seeing these same teams in the conference finals and seeing these same teams in the Stanley Cup and winning the Stanley Cup. And you may hear the term like not the term, but you'll hear a lot of people talk about, oh, the no state income tax and how much that has been playing a factor in the hockey world the last 5 years or so. So it hasn't been since 2019, the St. Louis Blues versus the Boston Bruins Stanley Cup final, where both teams in the Stanley Cup were not um, teams that played in a state with income tax. Since then, we've had the Panthers in the finals a bunch. You've had the Lightning in the finals a bunch. You've had the Dallas Stars made it in the bubble. Like it just a lot of teams that make it far are teams with that play in a state with no income tax, and you wonder why. Well, when 2020 and the pandemic hit, the NHL had issues with, revenue losses and other sort of money, financial losses. It hit them harder than it hit the other leagues, as they are the smallest of the four major sports leagues. And when that happened, the NHL kind of flattened their cap, meaning it's not going to increase the way it increases in the other leagues until they feel as though they fully recovered financially before they really give it a boost. And the other thing about the NHL is that they are the only league that really has like a hard cap that you cannot go over essentially by any means. Like you look at the NFL, they have a bunch of teams that are way over the cap every year. And it seems like, well, why does it even matter? Because there's a lot of dead cap. You convert it, you can figure it out, you can circumvent it where you are going a little bit over and you incur whatever you incur because of it. Major League Baseball, as we know, has the luxury tax. There's the three aprons of it. Um, to try to discourage some teams from spending too much. And the NBA, now with the second apron of their luxury tax being like a hard cap, you're seeing teams that get up to that high stop spending because they can't afford it and like the rules of it. But the actual salary cap itself, pre the luxury tax aprons, is rather like suggestive, to say the least. So the NHL is the only one that's like really you can't go over, you don't go over. So since 2020, it's increased every year only by like a smallish amount, like a couple million a year, like pretty just standard. Okay, let's increase the cap. Not like oh, we're going to see a big jump in cap because we saw revenue go, anything like that, because they're still recovering, like they say, from the pandemic at this point, which I feel as though that's got to run out eventually. It's been 5 years. I
Well,
feel like the league will
the
be
salary
fine.
cap's supposed to jump next year.
Okay, so this hopefully will be the last year of this. And okay, what does all this mean? Why does all this matter in the terms of what teams are good and why the teams in a state with no income tax? Why does that matter? Because teams aren't spending as much money. Teams across the league are not giving out as big of contracts to players, or the contracts aren't increasing. Contracts really haven't gone up in terms of value like they have in other sports over the last 5 years or so. You look at the NBA, players like the Supermax, how much more expensive has the Supermax gotten in the NBA over the years? It went from like Embiid signing his first Supermax was under 200 million, and it's gone up and up and up. And Jalen Brown, the most famous Supermax over the last year or so, uh, or 2 years ago, signed what, a 5 year, $300 million contract. So you could see how much that's been going up. We look at how the quarterbacks get paid in the NFL and the wide receivers and the edge rushers and how those contracts are getting larger and larger as the years go by. And even you look in Major League Baseball, especially Juan Soto, the best players in baseball in 2019 got what? 26-year-old Bryce Harper hit the market, 13 years, 330 million. We were like, oh my God, that's crazy. If 26-year-old Bryce Harper hit the free agent market today, he'd make a $700 million contract, as we see with Juan Soto when he hit free agency at 25. So everything's going up except the NHL. The NHL top
Um,
players in the league are
may I
still getting. Go
may
ahead.
may I interject? So over the
Sure.
next couple of years, the NHL salary cap is expected to go up a total of $25.5 million.
There you go. It's going to jump, but you look at, Sam Reinhart hit free agency last year and ended up re-signing with the Panthers. Sam Reinhart came off a 50-goal season and a great playoff run, and they won the Stanley Cup. And you could think, oh, yeah, a guy would want to stay for that. Maybe
He,
especially a hockey guy. So they're very like, it's just the nature of hockey to be very like small and not big personality. That's just what hockey kind of has always been. It's why they struggle in the national scape, because they can't, it's harder to push their players because the players don't put themselves out there. Okay. He only got in like the $8 million range a year. And that's still like good money for the NHL, but we're at a point where the best players in the league, the way it's kind of been tracking, they should all be kind of making over $10 million a year. And, that stat that came out that no Stanley Cup winner has ever had a player that makes over $10 million a year. annual value. And if you look at it in terms of percentage of cap, sure, it actually would exceed $10 million in like
Right.
today's standards.
If you pay
But
if half your salary cap is devoted to three players,
right,
then you're in the NHL, which is all about depth. It's always been about depth, Michael.
yes,
You
yes.
know, even when like the Penguins had Crosby and Malkin, they didn't start winning cups until they really started loading up that roster.
Yeah, the Penguins, all the teams, they kill you with their fourth line or whatever. Like, you know, you think of Brian Bickle on the Chicago Blackhawks in like the early 2010s, and it's like that dude is no more than just kind of like a grinder, but was able to have some big playoff moments and just kind of stepping up, and it's just that's the nature of how you win in hockey. So teams are signing or players are signing with teams in states with no income tax because they just get to keep more of their money. Because since teams aren't offering larger sums of money in free agency to go play there, players are like, you know what, I'll go play in Florida. I'll go play in Dallas. I'll go play in Tampa. I'll go play in Vegas because I get to keep more of my $8.4 million
In
salary.
Seattle, Washington
Yeah,
does not have state income tax.
right. As opposed to if a team like the Rangers aren't offering a really good player on the free agent market 12 million a year. Because if they did, they'd go sign there. So instead, when the Rangers are offering 8.8 million and the Florida Panthers are offering 8.6 million, players are going to go take the Panthers money because they're going to make more money themselves. And that's why we've gotten to this where 67% of the teams that have made the conference final since 2020 have been a team in a state with no income tax. The champions since then have also been teams that are in a state with no income tax. And this is it bad for the sport? Like to an extent, but if the cap is going to jump over the next few years, like it says, then that hopefully should be resolved. But we'll see.
Yeah. Here's my counter though, because I saw Paul Bissonnette made the same points you did, and Ansem Carter like jumped down his throat because he was
Yeah. Like
basically.
what about the previous 15, 20 years?
Well, his point was you're sort of basically claiming that the only reason the Florida Panthers are good is because Florida doesn't have an state income tax.
No, of course not.
Of
They've been
course not,
very
but that's
good.
sort
They
of like what.
deserve the credit for developing and coaching and all that sort of stuff. But the ability for them to keep some of their players, like it feels like the fact that Sam Reinhart decided to stay after the 50-goal season, not getting some massive looking contract, that to me is like big markets would have went out and paid a lot of money for Sam Reinhart,
But
had that
this is
not
the
been,
thing, though. Too, I do. This is my counter, though, to this as well. And I agree with a lot of the points you make too. Is like they're the only sport where like teams have concocted this idea. Like, granted, like the Rays and the Marlins like pocket all of the money in revenue sharing, but like
Mhm,
they're still profitable. Like the Marlins, despite no one showing up to their games, Michael, are
mhm.
still profitable. You know, it to me, I think at the same like it's definitely a benefit that they have, but I also think it does help the Stars, the Panthers, even the Lightning, even though the Lightning have been kind of down the last couple of seasons. They're still really good teams. It's sort of like players are taking less because they can net more, but I think it's like, hey, would I rather take, I could net more money playing for Florida and also have the chance of winning a Stanley Cup as opposed to going to play for the San Jose Sharks and make less money? Like,
Yeah, I mean the thing is that the salary cap in NHL, it hasn't jumped. It was 81.5 million from 2019 to 2022. It didn't even move. It was stagnant. When a salary cap's stagnant, like that is it's
that's what
jumped
I
since
think
then,
that's
but
a bigger that indicates a bigger issue that in hockey right now, which I think hockey has the most parity of the four sports when it comes to their postseason. It does feel like you have a couple
sure.
teams
But you're
that are
seeing the
just.
same teams though, you know? Like where the Stars Oilers have been like 3 of the last 5 conference finals or something like that. Like the Oilers been like the Panthers are in their 3rd straight Stanley Cup.
I think some of that's also like, let's see, like the Winnipeg Jets just straight up choking. Like they get into a 7 game bloodbath with a team that 2 months ago looked like it had no shot at the playoffs in the St. Louis Blues. Like I'll agree. Like I don't think like, I think because you see I see on Twitter there's people from Canada that are like cussing out the United States because it's like we'll never win a cup because all our players they just don't there aren't their national pride. They don't want to play in Canada, because
Hmm. Whatever.
effing America because they have lesser taxes, and it's like, dude, that's if you're a Canadian sports fan, you kind of voted for all these taxes that you're currently incurring where athletes
Sure.
don't want to be there.
Yeah. But when you look at like the salary floor, for example, in the NHL is 65 million. And then if the cap's only like 85 million, the disparity between the floor and the cap is not insane, where you look at what's the salary, I guess the what's the minimum. Baseball doesn't even have a salary floor. I thought they had something where it's like you gotta it's only like 40 million or something like that. Regardless, the thresholds are like 235 million for the luxury tax, and there's no minimum. So you can have the Pirates and the Marlins rolling out payroll of teams that are like $41 million, and then you look at the Phillies and the Mets and the Yankees and the Dodgers that are all spending $240 million. That's enormous. That's why you have bottom feeders in baseball, because you have ownership and teams that just straight up aren't spending anything to make their teams even better. Even the worst teams in the NHL still have to hit $65 million on their salary, on their payroll. They still have to hit that mark at
I,
least.
yeah, that's true.
I'm
I'll
not saying
like
baseball's
kind of.
minimum needs to be 200 million, but like Jesus Christ, we got to make it
I think
something
100
where.
million minimum is realistic in baseball because you have
Yeah,
26
I
players
agree. I
and you're
totally
and each
agree.
player on average earning $4 million. Like,
Or if you want to make it like a percentage of revenue that you have to spend or something like that,
right.
where it's like what you're making, you have to put back into your team. Like you're kind of making that sort of a rule. I think that
Yeah,
could be a
that's a
decent idea
baseball
too.
argument we'll talk about another day. But
But I think
last thing,
that's why you don't like the hockey bottom feeders or teams that just like draft poorly and can't develop players poorly. It's very rare that the crappy hockey teams are just cheap, you know? Like, the crappy hockey teams aren't because they're not spending money, it's because they spend stupid contracts, they can't draft well. You look at the Sharks, they stink now because they were good for how many years, and then all their good players got old, and they, like, mortgaged a lot of their future to try to win a cup with those teams, and they never won one. So now they're kinda just soaking it in and sucking on the bottom end of it. You look at, why the Marlins stink, and it's like they purposely trade away all their good players and all their talent that they have and then don't spend any money on guys. It's very,
and they
very
used to be,
different.
and the trades they're making aren't trades where they're like, all right, we're going deep scouting and we're like gonna get like like when they traded Josh Beckett and Mike Lowell to the Red Sox for Hanley Ramirez.
Yeah,
Hanley
like, that was.
Ramirez was a great player for the Marlins.
Yes, yes, you don't see them do any of that. Like, the only.
Like they traded for Starlin Caba because he was like 18, 17 years old, and they know they won't have to pay him for another 5 years when they call him up if he's good
Yeah,
enough to be called up.
and that's trading even Luzardo, who, like, was a promising young arm who had some legitimate injury concerns, where it's like, okay, that's like a risk. He's a risk. Luzardo's a risky player inherently, but it's like they traded MVP Giancarlo Stanton. They traded up and coming Christian Yelich. They traded up and coming Marcelo Zuna. They traded age prime JT Realmuto away. They traded Zach Gallen away. They traded so many guys away just for the sake of. They traded Ozuna for Gallen and then traded Gallen away after the fact. And it's just like I'm not really. They don't care. They don't care. They trade away all their good
I
players.
agree. Last thing I want to talk about hockey though, and then we'll go to baseball.
Mhm.
So a lot of people complaining about the Panth. I feel like people complaining about the Panthers about this state income tax thing. Oh, I gotta be honest, man. A lot of this whining I see as an Eagles fan with all the people whining about the Eagles.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's a little unfair to whine about it, like about the Florida Panthers, though, because like Michael, in the last ever since I started watching hockey, when you have a great team, not a good team, a great team, you're gonna be in the Stanley Cup picture for like 5 years in the NHL. You look at the in the '90s, the Detroit Red Wings, the Colorado Avalanche, the New Jersey Devils,
Yeah.
Pittsburgh Penguins.
Pittsburgh had a Stanley Cup window that lasted 10 years. The
Yeah,
Chicago Blackhawks had a Stanley Cup window that lasted a good, like, 6 years or so.
and then recently the Lightning, and
The
now it's
Lightning was another,
and
like, 5-year stretch.
like the Panthers.
Yeah.
Like
It's
I'm
just
not.
how it goes. No, for
That's
sure.
just how it goes too. And now to say, oh, like they're if you're gonna be like these morons on Twitter where they're like, Florida Panthers state income tax merchants.
No,
Like,
they it helps. It definitely helps, but they have done a lot of their heavy lifting on their own. Like, you know, to actually get into the nuances of it, when they had Jonathan Huberdeau was their, like, best player with, like, Sasha Barkov and a bunch of other guys that they had. They traded Huberdeau to the Flames, excuse me, for, like, Matthew Tkachuk and for
damn
Sam
it.
Bennett or whatever. So it's like they made the tough decisions and the smart trades were like, "You know what? This is a guy that can play winning hockey for us," where Huberdeau every year in the playoffs isn't getting it done for us. They had to bite the bullet and trade away their captain to get some better young talent that is gonna kinda build a little sustainable winner. They were the ones that went and got Sergei Bobrovsky and, after his time in Columbus, and it's just like those they deserve a lot of credit for the way they've built their team, and the state income tax thing, I just helps them keep their team together for longer. Like, if they didn't have Sam Bennett, would they be in the Stanley Cup again? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe they would have been, but maybe not. And I just think,
Yeah,
like,
but if
those
it's
sort
not
of
Sam
things.
Bennett, would they would have gotten somebody else?
They could have gotten somebody else. Exactly, exactly. So, do I think it's overblown when I think it's an issue. I think it's something that as long as the cap jumps, I think we're gonna see just some new teams make it a little further, but I don't think this is like "Oh, this is the only reason the Panthers are good." It's not like the pre-salary cap era of football is the only reasons the Cowboys were good, because they were able to just spend a bunch of money on all their players because there was no salary cap. They were able to spend all the money
You
in the
know,
world.
it's funny that we're two Philadelphia Flyers fans talking about the salary cap when the Flyers like insane spending was a big reason why the NHL created a salary cap in the first place.
Surely they won Stanley Cups during that time, John.
No, nope, nope. Demon. Yep, yep. Anyway, I'm. This is stressing me out. Let's move on. Let's move on. Phillies. So, couple things. Phillies Braves. I'll say this, Michael. I said this. I've been saying this for a while, and you know, I still feel strongly about this take. I think the Atlanta Braves are the Phillies' true rival, not the New York Mets.
The Phillies, we talked about this before, that, like, the hatred of the Mets is like a you hate them because you really have to, and they're so annoying, and I'm sure they feel the same way about us, that we're really annoying, and it's why we hate them, but very rare that you get the Phillies and Mets to be good at the same time. Last year was a example of that, but like, that series loss to the Mets, that sucked, but it really is nothing in comparison to all the Phillies alone, and granted all Philadelphia sports in terms of, like, pain and heartbreak and whatever. Like, the Lindor grand slam I saw from miles away. It was just so obvious that it was coming, and I it's just it don't care. Do not care. like over it at this point. I'd love to beat them again. It'd be cool, but like it's whatever. The Braves is like a festering hatred, visceral. Like they disgust me. Their fans disgust me. The manager disgusts me. A good bit of their players disgust me. And I've taken really some great joy in beating them in the playoffs a couple times. Like that has been wonderful. That's a great feeling. I enjoy going back to those highlights and seeing those games. It's like, that does make me happy. And another layer into it this week, where in the first game, in his first at bat, Strider plunks Harper right around the elbow with a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. And Harper hasn't played since. I don't think he'll go on the IL. He doesn't think he's going to go on the IL, but he is banged up. He hasn't swung a bat. It's one of those that get you in a bad spot and you can't really feel your arm all that much. And he just says it hurts a lot. So I don't think there's anything. They said there's nothing wrong in terms of damage. It's a contusion, and it's just gonna have to go away eventually.
Yeah, that's kind of like, happens in baseball. Guy gets hit, misses like a week. Could be way worse.
Mhm.
I do. I think the slide by Acuna well out of the base path, trying to break up a double play, going after Bryson Stott, though.
Yeah, that was a little.
That's dirty.
That was a little something.
That's
Yeah,
a dirty play in baseball because
yeah.
he made no attempts at trying to play the bag. He's just trying to, you
No,
know,
because Stock got off the bag pretty far to throw to first, and Acuna still kind of slid in his direction. That's a very 2000s, 90s slide that you would see where it's like, you watch some of those highlights and you watch someone turn a double play. I'm not saying the ones where the guy straight up decked the second baseman for no reason, but it's like you see the slide and it's just egregiously not even near the base. And you don't see that much in today's game. And that was
and it's
definitely
and
an
it's
example of that.
and it's Ronald Acuna Jr., who, you know, is like, we've seen how he is when we play. This is where, like, I just truly just hate the Braves. I've hated the Braves my entire life. Where
Well, they
you,
were good they were very good when you were growing up.
right, and like in the playoffs in 2022, Acuna gets beaned and stops the game for close to 20 minutes to throw off Zach Wheeler's timing. You know,
Mhm.
like that to me, it's sort of like, it's to me what like Acuna does with like with his with his BS. It's like the equivalent of like Jalen Brunson's flopping in the NBA. It's so annoying. And you know what?
Acuna
Like,
really
I've been
knows how
thinking
to.
about this for a while. Like, to me, like the people that wanted us to bean someone on the Braves after what happened to Bryce's retaliation, you know, I'll tell you, my first thought was, I don't think Strider tried to intentionally,
I,
as a,
I don't think he
I
did.
don't think he is, because he walked like five guys that day. So obviously his command right now isn't very good.
It was the second start of the season. Like Strider to me is not the guy. He's more the guy like I want the best players in the other team's lineup at all times. Like that's the kind of guy that he is. He wants,
Now, now,
respecter of the game.
after Acuna, after all of his unchecked nonsense, though, if you want to, now I think, should they have drilled Ronald Acuna? Yes, because it's like his BS has gone so. Because this is the thing, Michael, and this is kind of long term between Phillies Braves, is the Braves clearly still, they have this arrogance to them. Their manager they have this
They
arrogance,
do they do walk around like the shit don't stink.
and I feel like, though, they'll drill Bryce, and then, oh, we'll try to take out Stott. You notice they didn't do it in the doubleheader because why are you trying to get kicked? You can't get kicked out in a doubleheader.
Right. Right.
That's just really stupid.
Yeah.
which is why the
They
Phillies didn't retaliate because like, where are you gonna do? You knew if let's say Wheeler dinged anyone, then they would throw him out immediately.
he did hit Eli White or whatever. Uh, but I guess Eli White doesn't have the sort of pull to get Wheeler
You're not
tossed
going
out
to
of the
go
game.
after Eli White. If you're going to go
No,
after,
I hear you. I
you're
think
going after
I will
Ozuna.
say
You're
Ronald
going after
Acuna,
Acuna. You're going after
Ronald
Riley.
Ronald Acuna really, really knows how to annoy the fan base. He is very, very good at bothering and he's just I will say he is very, very good. He is incredible. Everything he hits is a rocket. He's just but he'll catch the ball in the outfield to make the last out, and he'll just kinda look at the fans and, like, because he knows they're gonna start booing him, and he loves it. He feeds off it. He hits a home run, he's gonna do his thing and, like, basically stop at third base, and the fans are really gonna get annoyed, and it's just whatever. Okay. When they hit Bryce, I am not one to I'm not one to want the retaliation. I really am not. I'm like, "What's the point?" It feels dumb, especially when it's, like, definitely not intentional. But
Baseball's
this
not that
time
type of
around
sport. If this was football and Micah Parsons, like
oh, listen, yeah, I want something very serious
or
to
like with
happen.
Frankie Louvu trying, several times to injure Jalen Hurts successfully at some point.
Yeah.
That's when you're like, oh, if he's in a pile, if Jordan Mailata just steps on and breaks his hand, you're like,
I don't mind.
good.
I don't mind much.
You know,
Yeah,
you
no,
don't
for
mind
sure.
that.
But I will say this time around, I was like, "You know what? F that. Someone probably needs to wear one from the Braves this time around." And I didn't know if I wanted to be Acuna. I didn't know who I wanted to be. I was like, Ozuna's an easy one to pick on. That dude's a piece of garbage anyways. Um, but I was like, maybe like Austin Riley or Matt Olson. I feel like they never have to deal with any repercussions for something. So like, F that guy because maybe Matt Olson can
Yeah, you
wear one
don't
up and
target. You
in.
know what? You don't target Acuna. You
Because
target one of his
especially because Acuna
teammates. So
seems to
his
get hit a
teammates are
lot
angry at him because he's like, dude, I'm getting drilled because
on your behalf.
you're just being a
Exactly.
dirty piece of crap, dude. Stop,
Yeah,
like,
so I was
cut
thinking
it out.
maybe, like, Carlos Hernandez could have put, like, 100 on Austin Riley's shoulder or something just to see, but they didn't do it. Is it the end of the world? No. Maybe they'll play again in August, we'll see. Um, but yeah, the hatred for the Braves is pretty peak. I will say, though, they took 2 or 3, which is pretty nice. They won a little gutsy one in the first game and certainly won a gutsy one in the, first half of the doubleheader,
Let's
and
hope
then
Jordan Romano can avoid any poorly kept mounds.
yeah, he looked better, but his command was just slightly off. He did kinda get hosed, on a bad like, it was a strike, but it's a tough one for the ump to call, but it's like, if it's the ABS, it's strike 3. Um, and then he got into some trouble, but he got out of it. I will say I am Kerkering, shout out Orion Kerkering has been pretty excellent since Jose Alvarado's, departure. He has been excellent. He just gave up the 1 run, which was an inherited runner, but besides that, he hadn't given up any runs, since, Alvarado got suspended, has come in big spots too with runners on, has just been kind of been nails, been really good. The guy who hasn't been as good since Alvarado got suspended is Matt Strom, and starting to worry a little bit. Like you look at his grand stats, and they're all pretty good. Strikeout rate still at like 30%, walk rate still like 6%, and his ERA is not too bad. But he's getting hit a lot with 2 strikes, especially in that outing of game 1 of the doubleheader. He had multiple 0-2 counts, multiple 2-strike counts, and just getting banged around. It's like, dude, it just can't happen. And I'm wondering if he is a little dead arm at the moment. I know we throw that term around a lot, but he's a guy that really has been used a ton the last 2 years, especially used a lot last year. And seemingly anytime the Phillies are in a game that they're like, all right, it's here to win, our starter went 6 innings, they want to go 7, 8, 9, Strom, Kerkering, and Romano in some sort of order. And to just feel like you have to do that every time you're winning and they're available, you're going to just kind of run them into the ground as we've talked about. And I think it's pretty important for them they're trying a bunch of guys, they're signing a bunch of guys to minor league deals, and I think they're gonna call someone up maybe soon, but I fear that Strahm might be getting a little dead armish and could probably use a little less usage over the next few weeks or so to kinda just reel himself back in because at the
Yeah,
moment, it just
I'm
feels a bit
looking at
scary.
his baseball savant page, and I'm comparing it from
Last year is a good
2024
one.
to
Yeah.
this year, and he's using his fastball 12% more of the time. So
I'm thinking his breaking stuff's a little too flat. It's not breaking the way it's supposed to. He might not have a good feel for it, and that could be part of dead arm, where it's like he can't get the right torque on his elbow and his arm to get the spin that he wants, so he's just relying on his fastball more, and, that's pretty worrisome.
yeah, let's see. Yeah, yeah, you're right. So his breaking balls are getting less drop to them. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's not great.
he might need
Um,
to, but he doesn't look like he's hurt.
I don't
So,
think he's hurt, I just think
but the
he's a
problem
little
is,
gassed.
I don't know if Aaron Nola's actually injured.
They made it seem like because he didn't throw for a while, unless he also had some pretty significant dead arm,
and
but
the whole his sprained ankle was we need to find a reason to put him on the injured list, but not uh, clue into the media that he has dead arms. So we're gonna get asked 9 million questions about Aaron Nola's elbow. You
yeah,
know, you're gonna get
yeah.
zero. You're gonna get one question on his ankle. So we'll see, but the Alvarado suspension doesn't exactly really help Strom in terms of giving him 2 weeks off to rest his elbow
No, of
or
course not.
stretch it out, or maybe stretch it out or whatever they need to do, because
Mhm.
we saw it with Zach Wheeler a couple years ago. He was kind of you know falling off a little bit. He gets a phantom IL stint, you know,
This in
and then he comes
2022 was huge.
and
He
then he
got
comes
that stint.
back throwing like gas again. He's been, he's never really. I don't know how many
He
IL
hasn't looked
stints.
back.
I mean, I don't. How many IL stints has he had since then?
See, I don't think he's maybe 1? I don't think he's even had any, to be honest. I can't think of one, but
Yeah, just yeah,
2022, I mean
if preventing a guy from his arm exploding is giving him preemptively 2 weeks off in the middle of the summer, if that's
Mhm.
what it takes, every team should do that.
Well, you're seeing them sorta kinda do it with Sanchez a little bit where, since he's had the forearm soreness early exit, um, he hasn't had a start where he's thrown more than 90 pitches. And, people are like, "Seems like, oh, they're pulling him early," sort of thing, but I do think it's preemptive because his command has been a little off, but if he's not sore and, they're not knowing he's not saying he's sore, then he's
Well, I
fine.
mean, when you
But
have
you're just being careful with him.
when you have two starting pitchers in your bullpen, Joe Ross, who now has
Mhm.
more transition to earlier, but he was a former starter,
Yeah.
and Taiwan Walker, and then potentially another one later this summer, whether it's going to be Ranger or Mick Abel, because Mick Abel had another ridiculous start in AAA. It's pretty obvious that he probably should be in a normal team. Like if the Phillies were in, I'll just say it. If this was the Braves, Mick Abel would be on the Braves right now. He'd be in their rotation.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't know, there's some worry as we all have had with the staff. There's some I guess some light worry with Bryce to see how much time he's actually going to be missing.
The
Um,
Phillies don't rush guys back from injury. That is not
no.
their
No.
MO.
And that's good. They said Nola will throw a rehab stint, which I think will be good for him. Um, when he comes back, Taiwan will be moved to the bullpen. Uh, but
That might
and they
be
said they want and they said they want to
That
try
Aaron
him.
Nola rehab stint might be the most watched rehab stint or most focused on, because the anxiety is going to be, what if he goes to his rehab stint and just gets lit up and like
Yeah, that
biologically?
would be really unideal. I'm
That would
also
be
worried about that.
extremely, and because then it's like,
Maybe he's just cooked.
then he's just mentally fried,
But
and
I
then
don't think he is. So I'm thinking he's going to be pretty good. But they are going to move Taiwan back to the bullpen when Nola comes back, and they did say that they're going to try him out in some leverage spots. So I think they're just because for because teams don't sell now, besides the Marlins, like we talked about, because teams don't sell their players off in May and in June. Um, you have to really wait until the trade deadline to kind of make a trade to help, your stuff out. They are going to try what they have. They're going to try those minor league trades and seeing if one of those guys looks really good and good enough to call up. They're going to try, Taiwan Walker in some leverage spots to see if he can get big outs in games. They've tried Jose Ruiz a couple times. He hasn't been able to consistently do it. They've tried Tanner Banks, and he actually does seem like he's been able to do it. If you want to take a nice look at an encouraging baseball savant page, Tanner Banks is actually pretty dang good at the moment. So shout out Tanner Banks that he's been able to figure out how to get outs and miss bats, and it's just like it's pretty interesting to see from Tanner Banks that if he could maybe be like you're gonna have two slow throwing lefties out of the bullpen, but if they both can get outs and be crafty, by all means, I guess I'll take it. I figured he'd be kind of like the Brad Hand of this team, like Brad Hand was for the Phillies in 2022, but maybe a little bit more trustworthy. And so far, so good. Maybe he can. Maybe he will fill a void that they need for these next few weeks before they actually start looking at some deadline guys. But until the trade deadline, it's not going to be much chatter to go about. So
so last thing in regards to the Phillies. So there's a guy right now that plays. He gets a lot of at bats, but he's been kind of struggling lately. It's been Johan Rojas, and obviously that Marsh is playing much better. Like he's kind of gonna get more of the lion's share too. But like Michael, let me ask you: we saw the nostalgia past week or so when it was announced that the Brewers, if they fall out of contention, they will trade Rhys Hoskins. That
right,
will that will happen.
yeah.
Dude, where the heck if you trade for Rhys Hoskins? Like I saw like the people's maneuvering. Oh, we'll take Bryce and move him to the outfield, and we'll move him to right
Bryson's.
field.
I would put Bryson left. To be fair, you don't need to use the arm as much in left field. And since Kepler is also like a natural right fielder as well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you would do.
It doesn't really fit.
That pipe dream might be over now that Bryce just got drilled in the elbow. I might not need him throwing from the outfield again just because, but let's say it works out. We know Reese is a pretty putrid first baseman. We know that. And we know having Bryce as a first baseman has
Reese
been
is
a
a DH.
luxury. Yeah. However, if he comes here, now all of a sudden you're flooded again with a lot of bad fielders. And they're already one of the worst fielding teams in baseball. So maybe why not just fully lean into it and say, F that defense. We're just going to slug and mash. And who knows? Let's say they did do it. I guess I don't know, man. It's your options are you're going to put Schwarber or Bryce in the outfield. And like if you put Schwarber out there, you keep Bryce at first, you DH Hoskins. If you put Bryce out there, now you're putting Reese at first and you're keeping Schwarber at the DH. And I don't know what that trade would look like. I don't know if like Kepler would be going back as like we just need to free up the active roster spot and like we'll trade you prospects, but like also take Max Kepler off our hands
Well, he's a
for it.
free agent. The Brewers probably wouldn't resign him.
No, but I'm not like he's not the piece. He's just like
if you
We
were to
need to
trade
clear.
if you were to trade anything to the
Are you gonna
knowing the
platoon
Brewers,
Castellanos and Kepler?
knowing
Like,
knowing that like analytics merchants that are the Milwaukee Brewers, Michael, the guy they would want back, and I think this is where fans are like really getting deep in nostalgia, they'd be like Johan Rojas because of all the years of control. He's shown he can be a great defensive player when he's focused,
I mean, I
and
think they just rather would try to.
he's improving his power numbers with the bat every
I think they just would try to get Crawford if they were gonna trade for one of our center fielders.
Yeah, but like Reese Hoskins, like no one trades top 100 prospects anymore, Michael. I think we'll wrap up baseball talk with this because I kind
My
of want
point
to.
is you're not getting much for Johan Rojas. I don't think you're getting much of anything for him.
Well, I think teams,
And
especially nowadays, are going to be mortified trading top 100 prospects because of some of these recent uh, emerging players in baseball, shall we say. I want to wrap up baseball talk with this. So, 4 months ago, when the New York Mets signed Juan Soto, you were not happy.
no,
You were not happy.
I was upset. Yeah.
And Juan Soto right now, he's the unluckiest player in baseball. But
Yeah.
but at the same time, it is looking like the Nationals, of all the teams in baseball that ever traded a star player away because they couldn't afford him slash the guy just didn't want to be there anymore because he wanted to pick his own team
He
versus
wanted
being
to make more money, and damn it, he did.
right. Well, it's looking very strongly that the Washington Nationals might be in a better spot by not re-signing Juan Soto versus what they got back.
Yeah, the Nationals, they probably got the best. It's probably the best haul for a star player
Ever.
return that I've ever seen. Yeah, where they got 4 prospects back, and 3 of them, um, were top ones, and the 3 that were the top ones are 3 really damn good baseball players. CJ Abrams has like an 870 OPS.
All-stars.
James Wood is a legitimate superstar. The Nationals have this knack for developing these demons that I love. It started with Rendon, then it became Juan Soto, and now here we are with James Wood. And it's like, dude, I'd do anything for a guy like James Wood to be on the Phillies. Are you kidding me? That dude's enormous, and he just hits the shit out of the baseball. He walks really well. He uses all fields as well. He hits. It took him till like his eighth home run to pull one. All the other ones were the other way. And you look at the size of the guy and you're wondering, how does this guy not pull home runs? Well, now he's starting to. He's got like 16 homers. He's got like a 970 OPS. Hit another one last night. He's he's a freak. He is a ridiculously good superstar baseball player that he's one of 3 players under 22. So there's only been 2 players under 22 to have a WRC plus over 160 for a season, and both of them were Juan Soto with the Nationals. And as of right now, James Wood has a WRC plus over 160. Granted, it's not even June, but I don't think he's very good, and he's going to be very good. And the Nationals got a good one. And then the third guy, Mackenzie Gore, starting pitcher, former #1 overall pick, has this year is like finally seems like the full breakout for him. We saw a lot of flashes for it last year, but this year he seems like he's putting it pretty much all together. He is a strikeout machine. Um, he was the first pitcher to 100 strikeouts this year. He is easily on pace for 200. He should get plenty of strikeouts long as he stays healthy, and he's doing a pretty good job at preventing runs as well, with a pretty solid ERA and other sort of analytics that point to show his
Right.
effectiveness.
And like I'll say this for the Nationals because they're so like they're one of the most loaded farm systems in baseball. they could, if they wanted to rip another team off for prospects, if they were to shop Mackenzie Gore at the trade deadline, I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea.
I guess you could try to trade him. I don't know. I think Eh, maybe it would be interesting to see what you could get back for him. But if you could say, like, I think every team would trade a star player where it's like, okay, you have this star player who's incredible, one of the best players in baseball. It's like you got to trade him though because he doesn't want to stay. You offered him a huge contract. He's saying no because he's hell bent on at least testing free agency and whether, this he got traded in 2022 and his free agency wasn't until 2024, but he was like, I'm gonna hit it. I'm gonna test it. I'm not taking whatever you offer. You gotta trade him. You can't keep him, especially when you're not a good team. So, I mean, you're guaranteed, okay, you're gonna get a starting all-star caliber middle infielder, shortstop. You're going to get a superstar outfielder bat that is like when their careers are starting, you're going to be like, man, this kind of reminds me of the guy we are trading away. And you're also going to get a top two uh, rotation arm. I think you'll take that. Absolutely. As we've said, there hasn't been a team that I think has ever gotten a prospect pool return as good as what the Nationals got for Juan Soto from the Padres.
Do you, so going back the other way with Juan Soto though, so like right now with Juan Soto, do you just think that I think the Mets fans are being way too disrespectful?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you look at how he started his time in San Diego, it was pretty similar to this. He was in the middle of a down year with the Nationals, and then also, like, when he got to San Diego, struggled a bit, but then had a really, really good 2023, and obviously had a great season with the Yankees last year. Like, if you go and look at the Savant page and you see that everything is bright red besides his launch angle sweet spot, which, hey, that's probably his problem because he's hitting the ball on the ground and hitting the ball straight up in the air a little bit too much. He's popping up and rolling over a little bit more than it just too much. It's what it is, but everything else is pretty normal, pretty standard Juan Soto type stuff. He's just like you said, he's getting very, very unlucky. Despite the fact that he is struggling the way that he's struggling, he's still in the well, I guess he dropped out since one Soto. Yeah, he's dropped out, but he was in the top of WRC plus for like a good bit. And since then he has dropped, but he's still walking at a pretty high rate, I would say. And he's just been like you said, he's just been unlucky. He's still gonna get on base, and when the hits start falling, it'll be fine. I don't know. It's year one of the 15-year contract, and it's not like the Mets are bad. You know what I'm saying? It's not like the Mets are struggling. Like they're in the middle of struggling at the moment, but they still have a top record in baseball. They're only a couple games out of first place in one of the toughest divisions in baseball. I don't think that it's worth crying about at the moment when
Yeah, this
they're
is very similar to when Bryce first got to the Phillies.
but even less so because the Phillies weren't good. Like the team itself was not good. Like we got Bryce and we're all excited, but it's like, God, you take an actual look at that roster. Starting rotation sucked. It was horrible. There was a significant drop off with the bats after that like top slew of guys. Where still Michael Franco
Reese,
was playing
Bryce,
every day. Yeah, after Reese, Bryce, JT, and like Segura, you still had Odubel playing every day. You still had Didi. Well, you didn't have Didi yet, but um, Segura was playing shortstop for you. You still had it's
Walter
Azar,
Reyes.
right? Yeah, Torres in 2021. Like it's just like the team wasn't serious until 2022. Um, where the Mets are like they're a good team. You did, and how soon they forget that like Francisco Lindor was putrid his first like year and a half with the New York Mets. Like, do people forget that? Like, dead serious. I think people forgot how bad Lindor was to start his Mets tenure, and everyone was like, "Man, Lindor really maybe was overrated, whatever, whatever." And now he's like the face of the
Yeah, I
Mets,
remember
like the
when in
captain of the
MLB
Mets.
when I first started playing MLB The Show again, he went from being like a diamond to like a silver.
Right. And don't you remember like he was like that story where he like choked out like he choked one of his teammates, but they were like, "Oh, there was a rat in the dugout or whatever." But it was the story of him like screaming at Nimmo or something stupid like that. Like there was legitimate issues in that clubhouse in like 2022 for them, and Lindor was struggling mightily. And now it's like Lindor can walk on water for Mets fans. I think just be a little patient. You know, I know maybe it's rich to say for a certain thing, but Soto is going to be very, very good for the Mets. He's going to be very good for the next 15 years. And just because it's not starting out super hot, I think it would be ridiculous to be this up in arms about it, especially when the year's not even through. Like, it's not like you go the whole year and maybe in the playoffs they lose and it's like, man, this was the team to win the World Series and Juan Soto sucked all year and he choked it away for us. Like that's what Nick Castellanos was for the 2022 Phillies. If you got any version of Nick Castellanos besides the 2022 version, you probably beat the Astros in the World Series. But he was so terrible that
I
if
don't know,
you,
man.
you
I
know,
was rewatching some of that 2022 World Series, and that a devil demon magic the Astros had.
oh
Like they got
sure,
so
but like,
lucky on certain things.
but
Like it
John, Nick Castellanos
was like a
was
guaranteed out.
horrible.
You're right.
It was
He
a
was a
guaranteed out, and he
guaranteed
was
out.
hitting behind Bryce. Your guy behind Bryce was the guaranteed out. It was terrible. And, you know, if he was what he was in 2023, what he was in 2024, and what he's been to start off this year, any of those versions, we're talking very different about certain things. But he wasn't. And, you know, until that happens for the Mets fans, I don't think I'd complain too much. You can be annoyed, whatever, but they're still in top of the league and they still are fine. I don't know.
All right,
Anyways,
main event
on to the NFL.
football.
Before we get into the Eagles' schedule, there's one thing we wanted to quickly touch on. So, since the a lot of chatter about rule changes and whatever, and rule proposals, and tush push doesn't get banned, blah, 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 the NFL comes out that the owners have discussed with Roger Goodell, whatever, the idea of redoing the salary cap in a way that would essentially eliminate the loopholes and the manipulation that teams use um, to help, you know, be able to pay more players, they kick money down the line, all that sort of stuff. Essentially, look at what the Eagles do with their contracts, where Jalen Hurts signs this contract where you average it out, it's like 50 million a year. But if you really look at it, his cap hit last year was only 13 million. His cap hit this year is only going to be 20 million. And his cap hit in a couple years is going to be like 50 million. But guess what's going to happen before that cap hit of 50 million comes around? They're going to redo the contract. They're going to restructure it. They might give him another extension and they're going to just keep kicking the money down the line until they can't anymore. And people say, "Oh, well, when that day of reckoning comes, the Eagles are going to fall apart." You look at it, you're like, "Well, this year was kind of like the day of reckoning for the
They've been
Eagles.
doing
They
this
had
since 2016. It hasn't
that's what
come
I'm
yet.
saying. They've been doing it with Lane Johnson for his entire career. They've been doing it with they did it with AJ Brown, like already, you know,
As
and
long
doing
as
it
the
with
NFL makes money and their profits increase, which based off of
happens every year.
FanDuel and fantasy football and
And all the streaming services, you know,
streaming, and the fact they're trying. We're all complaining about the Eagles playing on every day. It feels like, but Sundays this upcoming year, which we'll get into later. Um, they're gonna keep making more. They're gonna with their next TV deal. The cap is gonna skyrocket.
yes. So when this next CBA is up, which is like 2029, it's not till like a few years. They're gonna try to eliminate some loopholes, and like loopholes being like void years, probably like a lot of it, because the Eagles
Yeah,
put
can
void
I
years on everybody.
may I interject with
Sure.
why this Roger Goodell wants to kind of go after the teams like the Eagles and even the Chiefs do this. The Chiefs do the same thing.
Yeah. I will be right back. Yes, go ahead.
Yes. So evidently the some of the quote unquote poor owners, like the Raiders or the Bengals, for example, were complaining that it's not fair that the Eagles can do a lot of these restructures by spending more cash to get the restructures done, where they claim they don't have the money to do it, which I think we all know isn't true. And the fact that the did you hear what I
Yeah,
said?
no, yeah, I'm hearing you. Yeah.
Right, right. The fact that we're going to have to change the salary cap rules because look, the cheap ass Bengals, whose best defensive player may sit out the entire season because they're a bunch of cheapskates. To
Yeah.
me, the sport's going backwards, and I don't think this ban is going to go through because this could potentially cause a labor stoppage, Michael. Because this is where the complaining comes in. Here's a scenario: the Eagles they give AJ Brown an extension, right?
Mhm.
And they give him like a ton of money up front to sign this extension. This is how the Eagles get these contracts done. If you're a player, why would you
A lot of bonus
restructure?
money.
Right. So then let's say like you look at the Bengals are complaining about it because they enter into this like year-long pissing contest with Jamar Chase and the Brown family, you know, the Eagles are it's the Eagles' fault for doing this. We have to pay Jamar Chase a bunch of money.
And T.
Yeah,
Higgins.
go like that's pathetic. Like that to me
Yeah.
is like if you're a NFL fan, I it's you would just be pissed. You're gonna blame the Eagles for like what your owner just not wanting to pay Jamar Chase, or like the Vikings are complaining because they had to go pay Jay Jettas more money. Like,
Yeah, it's part of why the Eagles rank lowly in um, like those ownership scores where it's like, oh, the locker room isn't as state of the art and nice as some of the other ones because Jeffrey spends a lot of the money on, like you said, upfront money to the players, a lot of bonus money that they can shell out cash that doesn't count against the cap, so the Eagles aren't in cap hell, and the players are still happy because they're getting
that's
paid.
the thing too. It's like they go into training camp and nobody's creating a fuss. I mean, look at the Hassan Reddick situation. Apparently, the only team where he like wasn't a
Behaves.
problem was the Eagles.
Yeah, yeah. And you look at that, Howie went out and got rid of that situation that has clearly devolved into, like, Hassan Reddick's going out sad, was one of the best pass rushers in the league, essentially didn't play last year. When he did play, it was very non-anything and now isn't showing up to, you know, OTAs or whatever for Tampa. So, yeah, the Eagles, like, clearly dodged a bullet with that, and, I it just the Eagles take care of the players, they always do, like, they always take care of their players as if they, are good and deserve it, and the Eagles will never make a player that deserves it feel as though they're not getting treated right, and if they do, and aren't trusting that it's like they will, that's how you end up like Hassan Reddick, and with the void years that the Eagles use a lot, it's what they did with Josh Sweat last year. It's what they did with Dallas Goedert this year, where they restructured their contracts so they, because they really want to stay and whatever, they just kick some money in some void years so they can stay for a little bit longer. I don't know. The Eagles just conduct business well, and like you said, the league is not happy about it. It does feel like it's a targeted thing at this point, with all these rule changes.
And like I'm sure they're going to make some amendments to the cap. I don't think they're going to do it's going to be a full blown thing because at the same time, like when the next CBA comes up, like I don't know, man. Like with the Ravens, for example, like if they want to keep certain guys on defense,
Hmm.
like
Yeah,
and then
we'll see.
keep Lamar
Yeah.
happy, are they gonna? They're gonna do the same thing. The Eagles and the Ravens front offices are very similar with how they
Hmm.
approach like their teams. So
Yeah.
yeah. So speaking of restructures, now that we're on that topic, the yesterday, I'm shocked that they could actually this actually happened. The Eagles found a team to trade for Bryce Huff.
Yeah, Robert Saleh back in San Francisco as the D
Well, that's why
coordinator.
I thought the Eagles would have wound up cutting him, and then he would just immediately go to San Fran because that's the only team, the only coach that knew how to
Get the
like
most out of him. Yeah.
get anything out of him.
So yeah, they trade him for a day 3 pick. We don't know what it is yet. Could be a fifth that could turn to a fourth. Could just be a fourth. Could be a sixth. Whatever. Late round draft pick for Bryce Huff just to get him off the team. And there was some like misreporting. It's like, oh, the Eagles just created 15 million in cap space. It's like, well, they didn't. They created like 2 million in cash this year, but they're gonna lose like 5 million next year. However, when compared to just cutting him, like had they had just decided to cut him instead of trading him away, they would have they saved about 7-ish million over the next few years. So that's where Howie like is making it work by trading him instead of just releasing him where they had no desire to have him on the team for this upcoming year and the duration of the contract. And you're saving some money in the grand scheme of things versus cutting him, but you're still losing money. You're still negative on the contract because you just are. But compared to cutting him, sure, you're saving some money.
Yeah, the obviously the advantages for this for the Eagles are they get another draft pick for next year,
Yeah.
uh, probably fifth round. Maybe that could become a fourth round based off of him hitting certain benchmarks,
Hmm.
and the edge rusher room is going to be interesting because obviously you're counting on Nolan Smith, who recovering from a torn tricep right now. He's going to be ready for the start of the season, but he's
Yeah.
still injured technically. They have Jalix Hunt, promising player from last year.
Hmm.
Uh, a free agent signing I was really excited about, BJ Ojolari. I think he's going to
Hmm.
be I think he'll be good. Obviously, I think he'll be a one of those like high upside signings. And
Hmm.
then jo- Josh Uche, who I'm not really. Josh Uche is basically like reverse Bryce Huff.
Yeah. Yeah. So I
That's
mean, they
what he.
they they still could probably use a bigger uh bodied defensive end. Their edge rushers at the moment are pretty small, I'd say. And like losing Brandon Graham to retirement is part of that too, where you have some guys that can stop the run, but I think they would like to have maybe another body in there that can be just a
Yeah,
little
I
larger.
agree. 'Cause you're looking at camp, and they mentioned like this is obviously way too early, but they said I'm not surprised Tyler Steen was working with the ones in that right guard position.
Yeah.
Kenyon Green was behind him. Obviously, Keely Ringo was starting a lot at outside corner for a lot of the drills.
Yeah.
They also tried. I know you're going to be mortified when I say this. Cooper DeJean.
Well, that's just in their base, which is fine. I'm more fine with it, I will say. Base defense meaning it's their set when they have 5 linemen on the field. When Jordan Davis is out there with, say, Moro Ojomo and Jalen Carter, and then your 2 edge rushers, and you only have 2 cornerbacks on the field. So when you only have 2 corners on the field, it's Quinyon Mitchell and, last year it was just Slay on the other side. Would you rather have it just be Quinyon and Ringo, or would you rather have it be DeJean, where it's more of a running situation probably anyways, and it does not
Or
happen for
short
that many
yardage.
snaps. Yeah,
Short
yeah.
yardage
So I
passes.
think maybe red zone, like that sort of stuff. So maybe that's I'm okay with that, I think. If he's getting burned out there, then you gotta just never do it. But if he can hold his own for the few plays that they run it, I think it's fine. I think it's a problem when it becomes not
Yeah.
just in the base
Right,
defense.
right. It's way too. It's we'll see more later on though. But
We'll
I do
see.
agree
Yeah.
with you about the edge rusher with the fact that Hendrickson might never be a Bengal ever again. T.J. Watt no show at OTAs. I'm not saying Trey Hendrickson's going to be an Eagle.
No, I don't think
I
he
wouldn't,
is.
but I would not be surprised if Howie Roseman pulled something off. Which,
Yeah.
which think about it, like irony. The owner complains about what the Eagles are doing, and yet they help them out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's the crazy thing about this Bryce Huff trade to me, Michael, is that Jed York was being super snarky about the tush push, and he probably hates the Eagles for what
Yeah.
happened in 2022. And they trade for Bryce Huff, which if you're a Niners fan, like you're gonna be thinking about it like, oh Mike, I'm so excited we're getting Bryce Huff. Like no, you're
No,
probably
you're
thinking
just
like
hoping Salah works some magic with him.
exactly. You're probably thinking like, oh God, we're just scraping the bottom of the barrel like to get players. Like why
Mm.
are we giving the Eagles a pick when we know the Eagles clearly don't want anything to do with this guy?
Yeah.
You
So,
know,
all that being said, into the meat and potatoes, what we want to actually do is finally go through the schedule, our way too early, game by game, win loss predictions for the 2025 Philadelphia Eagles. So, I actually did mine. Like, I thought about it, I did mine. I have what I want to happen, what I believe is a good thing for it. There's a few teams that are like absolute can't lose to, and then there's a few, I okay. To kick us off, Thursday night, opening the NFL season, as all Super Bowl champions do, the Philadelphia Eagles will be at home
well, unless you're
ring
the New England Patriots.
except
Right.
yeah, unless you're the 100th anniversary fake rivalry Packers Bears anyways. Not a that's not a fake rivalry, but
Fugazi rivalry.
yeah, anyways, Eagles, Cowboys, week 1 at the link, banner raising, all that good stuff. I have this one down as a win. God forbid they lose. Just God forbid they lose.
Yeah, I
I
have this
don't
down
think
as
I'd
a
handle
win
that
as
well.
well. I think, listen, man, the Cowboys right now, with all this hype, the whole Pickens trade, their win total set at 7.5. The Giants
Mhm.
is set at 6.5.
The Cowboys over unders at 7.5 wins.
Correct.
Like if they're
Tough
healthy,
schedule.
I get it, but if they're healthy, I definitely think they're winning like 9 games at least.
That it feels like they're suckering people to take the over.
Yeah, like if Dak gets hurt, sure, but
Well,
looking at the Cowboys as a whole, like that Pickens
well,
trade,
they
say what you want
Brad
about Pickens.
Schottenheimer is considered probably one of the worst head coaching hirings in recent memory.
I agree. The
And that
Cowboys, they
plays a
have
major
some
factor into your success. If your coaching is bad, then like you're not going to be
they're gonna
successful.
have some legitimate flaws, and it's gonna be they can't stop the run and they can't run the ball. They have one of the worst running back rooms in football. Um, However, if Dak's healthy and the receivers are healthy, I do think they're gonna have a pretty dynamic passing attack. It'll all depend, I guess, on the coaching, but in terms of the talent level, like the Cowboys really haven't had a true deep threat in quite some time. They've been kind of trying that with Jalen Tolbert and some other just schlubs that they've been rolling around out there. And George Pickens is one of the best deep threats in football with his contested catch ability, and he does have some good speed. So I actually do think it's a really good fit for what they were lacking in the receiver room, and I think that both of them could have some pretty big years, Lamb and Pickens. And if Dak's healthy, I think Dak can have a normal good statistical Dak season where he throws for over 4,000 yards, throws for 30 something touchdowns, the normal garbage. And that might just be enough to win 9 or so games, but not this one. They cannot lose this game. The Eagles by no means can lose the opener to open up the season. And I think you agree. So
I would agree with that. I obviously I would I think for the Cowboys, I think they're going to probably get off to a rougher start than what they expect. Then probably play better down the stretch.
yeah,
Um, like you said, like they're just abhorrent, like refusal to like put any like serious stock in the running back position. Um, and the fact they can't stop the run, like that's they're in a very bad matchup with the Eagles in that regard.
yeah. I don't know if you can hear that. My computer sounds like it's gonna go take off. Maybe you don't. Hopefully you don't.
No, I don't hear you.
Anyways, all right, that's good. Okay,
All right. So then we
week
both have us
two.
win next week.
Yeah, week two, the rematch, Sunday 4:30, um, in Kansas City, Eagles Chiefs. I do have this one as a loss. I don't think it's like the end of the world if they lose. It would kind of be like, we lost the Super Bowl to them and then we went and won the following year in the regular season. They lose the Super Bowl to us. They come out and win against us. We know the Eagles have had some slow starts. Well, had a slow start last year, I'll say. I guess they didn't the year before, but with the new play callers, new offensive coordinators, the whole nine, it takes some rough patches sometimes, and I think that they. While I'll preface this: the Eagles are better than every team that they're going to play this year, and any loss that they have is just going to be some level of frustrating because they are the better team, and especially early in the season. So a loss here, I think, would be very annoying, very frustrating, but I don't think it would be that shocking to me. I think that while the Chiefs, I don't know how much better they got, I do think that there's a level of just like pride in that they got spanked and in the Super Bowl, and it's a very, very big deal for them to go out and
Well, with
put
the
on
way
a good
the
performance.
NFL, so the Chiefs open up in Brazil, and then they got to come, and then
They come
their home,
home.
their home opener is against the Eagles, so it's gonna be their home opener. They're gonna be juiced for
Yeah.
it. Michael, here's the thing though, man, is like, dude, I feel like this is gonna be like the year the Chiefs are gonna win 10 or 11 games purely based off the fact that how good Mahomes is. Like people just hate Mahomes so much, but he's gonna be like an MVP candidate because their roster just isn't good. Like old
No.
Travis Kelsey, we're gonna rely on Rasheed Rice coming off a serious knee injury,
Yeah, if he's healthy, I think Rasheed Rice is really, really good.
but their
But
O line is bad.
yeah, and it got well, it'll depend on their draft picks,
They
but
traded Joe Tooney away.
yeah, and
Joe
committed to
Tooney's like a
Trey
Hall of
Smith.
Fame guard.
Yeah, committing to Trey Smith and moving Joe Tooney. Interesting decision. We'll
And they
see how the
signed
rookie
like the
tackle
backup
does.
left tackle of the Niners who came in when Trent Williams was hurt last year.
So are the Eagles winning this game in your eyes, Joe?
I think they're going to win this game. I think this is.
Nice.
I think I wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs start off 0-2 and then they hit DEFCON 5. I think that
Yeah.
like everyone's all like the Chiefs haters are going to be going bonkers because they're going to be like the ding dong
It's
with the
here. We're here. Yeah.
yeah, and it's not going to matter because they'll just win 11 games and win a couple playoff games anyway. But
Yeah.
that's my
Week
that's my thought
week
process.
3, Sunday at 1 p.m. Looks like no one got a primetime wish with this one. Rematch once again of a playoff game, the divisional round. Eagles, Rams, Eagles hosting the Rams. We know how pissed off the Rams were. They really
Yeah, but
feel
this
like they
is
had the
so
game.
obscenely favorable for the Eagles, though.
Yeah. Yeah, the Rams really thought that like, I think they were shocked that they lost. I think just the way the game was going, the way that drive was going. Listen, I was a little shocked that they didn't win, but it really felt like they were gonna put in the end zone, win the game, and it would've been awful. But they didn't, and they've been pretty bitter about it, whatever. This is one of those games where it's like, they can't lose to the Rams, can't have them get the satisfaction, like, "Oh, see, see, see." So when they played under normal conditions in their dome, the Eagles absolutely railed them, and I think we could see a little similar. So I'm giving the Eagles a win here. They're gonna start 2-1.
I'm giving the Eagles a win as well. Michael, I find the Rams an interesting team because I think defensively they're getting better every year.
Yeah,
Jared Verse is a problem. He's probably going to be like the newest like elite pass rusher in the NFL.
yeah, really
But
good
I look at their
combination of size
offense
and strength.
though, Michael.
Machine.
Like, let me just float this out there. Like, Kyron Williams is a big reason why. He's the other big reason why they lost to the Eagles because of his fumbling.
Yeah, he is a it's crazy. He never fumbled. He was, like, not fumbling ever, and then it was like when Puka came back from injury and they started throwing the ball a lot more, all of a sudden he developed a fumbling issue. Like, it was kind of obscene. Um, Kyren Williams is a nice player, a nice running back, but if he's gonna have a fumbling problem, it's pretty detrimental like we saw in the playoff game, how huge of a tide that turned for the Eagles. Um, but their offense, yeah, like they lost Cooper Cup, but they got Devontae Adams, correct? Where I think that's a pretty. I still think Adams has stuff in the tank, and especially with Stafford, where I think they're going to have a very, very enjoyable time together. And Puka's a freak. I think Puka's a top 5 receiver in the league. He's very good, or top 6 or something. He is a very, very good wideout. Their offense, I think, will be fine long as Puka Nacua is healthy, and they'll be able to, you know, feed
It's
that.
really
But
pathetic when the top question on Google for Devontae Adams is, does Devontae Adams have a Taco Bell in his house in real life?
okay, so both have that as a win. I have the Eagles at 2-1. You have the Eagles at 3-0, and then the dreaded Week 4 road Tampa Bay Buccaneer game. It's the worst time of the year. It's yeah. I
Yeah, I'm putting
actually
this as a loss.
Yeah, I actually have this as a loss as well. I think there's a legitimate chance that they win, very similar to early 2023 where they kind of dominated Tampa, and that was nice. Dominated Tampa in Tampa, and then obviously the playoff game happened, and it kind of created even more ghosts. So I don't know. Jalen's got a thing against Todd Bowles that he kind of freaks out a little bit, has a little bit of a panic. I think I'm gonna save the Eagles like breaking through and finally beating Tampa for like a playoff game. Like I don't need the breakthrough to be, oh, they beat them in week 4 this year. I could have it really be like, all right, here's the wild card game or
Yeah,
divisional
it's going to
game
be
at
like a
home.
monsoon flood, and it's going to be like 14-10 Tampa or something stupid.
Sure. I mean, even if they get beat around again, we'll see if they're healthy. The Eagles are healthy, if whatever. But I'll save the Eagles breaking through and finally beating Tampa, and Jalen playing well against Tampa for like a playoff game means a little bit more. So I have them at 2-2 again. John, do you think we'll be able to handle conversations at 2-2 again the way we barely made it through this year? Uh,
I think we would because they're
I
coming
think it
off
would be like,
winning a
"Well, we
Super
started
Bowl.
2-2 last year, and look at what happened." Like I think I'm gonna lose my mind a little bit.
That's what your dad's going to say.
Everyone's gonna say that. Yeah, it's gonna be so, and it's a big reason why I've wrestled so much with Tampa game and another game we're gonna talk about, where it was like they're gonna lose one of them, and I was like, I guess it'll just be the Tampa game. Anyways, following week, they're at home against the Denver Broncos, one of the up and coming teams in the league, one of the better defenses in football that definitely got better. I think they're going to have a top 3 defense in the league this season. Sean Payton tends to do pretty well against the Eagles as well. I do have this one as a win, though. It's
I
at
have this as
home.
the Vic Fangio revenge game.
Yeah, it's Vic Fangio. I think Vic Fangio is going to do a lot to keep Bo Nix in hell. Um, I don't love what Denver did with the running back position. I think that was something that was, I don't know. It just
I don't
needed
know.
some
Everyone's
better
yapping
improvement.
about RJ Harvey being this
Sure, I will see. I'll believe it when I see it.
sleeper. Yeah, like here's the thing though with Denver. There's a lot of things still need to break for their offense. And I still
Mhm.
think Bo Nix can be good, but I also think too like Denver snuck up on a bunch of people, and I don't think they had the type of off season that people thought they should have had. Like they didn't really upgrade running back. They upgraded their O line though, but their O line was really good
Their
last
O-line was
year.
was the reason they were good like, here's the thing, Denver snuck up on teams. I don't think their defense snuck up on many people because they had a lot of really good players already. Their offense, Bo Nix is not sucking, I think, snuck up on people, and I think teams will be a lot more ready for
They added
Bo
Evan
Nix.
Ingram, who was hurt last year. So like,
A
I don't
nice
know.
player, but
I don't know, man. Like your offense hinging on Evan Ingram being a Jimmy Graham type player just doesn't like. If they jumped up in the draft to take like Tyler Warren
or
or like
Colson Loveland.
Colson Loveland, because we know how much a tight end in the Sean Payton offense how important it is.
Yes.
You
So,
know, maybe yeah. So I
but I
don't know.
just the Eagles are just better, and I think
I
defensively,
can
like,
see.
that
I
could be
think
a
the Broncos are
low-scoring
going to be
game.
like a in-season trade that's going to have a player that's going to really help them the
Yeah.
second half. So I like playing Denver this early in the season. I think that's a good spot for the Eagles as well.
Next game, Thursday night on the road, against the New York Giants. They can't lose. They can't
Do
lose
we
to the
see
Giants this year.
Jackson Dart at this game?
Who knows, man? I don't I don't
So,
know. I
Michael,
don't
I'm gonna. So this is where you're gonna be horrified with what I'm about to say. I would not be. So I have the Eagles what right now at 4-1.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah,
Every
4 and
year,
1.
whenever I pick the Eagles schedule, I pick a game where no one has them winning, but they win. And then I pick them to lose a game where everyone has them winning, but they lose. I would not be surprised at this point in the season for the Giants that Russell Wilson is just so cooked and washed, but Jackson Dart is not ready to play. The Giants in on a short week in an act of desperation throw out Jabu to
Oh my god.
start, and he's because he has no he does not care about the ghosts seeing ghosts in the Fangio defense. He's going to be chucking the ball 50 times this game, and it's a shootout, and the Giants win on some Fugazi call or something. I might put this as how many times are we just going to continually just beat the brains out of the New York Giants?
Until we're not good anymore, John, until we're not good anymore, or until we're in another
Because I'm
collapse
looking at
like we were
another
in
game on the
2022.
schedule that they could lose. You know
So
what?
you
All
have
right.
them
You know
losing to
what?
the
I'm going to have them.
Giants.
Yeah, because I'm going to say the Eagles freak out as they lose to the Giants, and then we're
And they're
freaking.
3 and 3? Oh no, sorry, you have them at 4
They're
and 2.
4-2 going into Minnesota, and we're freaking out because the only time the Eagles ever win in Minnesota is like Super Bowls.
Yeah. So, okay, you have them losing there. I would not be happy.
Like I
Okay.
put, like I think last year I put the Panther game as a loss, and Michael, how close was I to being correct on that?
You did actually end up putting it as a win. I think I
Did
talked you
I?
out of it. You did. You were on the fence, but you did. You had them losing to the Jags, which hindsight. Um, yeah, looking at us doing it last year was just funny. Anyways, okay, week 7 against the Vikings. So I alluded to this earlier when I said there's 2 games that I was really up in the air, and I was like, they're gonna split them, and it was the Tampa game, and it was this game against the Minnesota Vikings. So in my mind, if they lose to the Vikings, it looks like this. It looks like they're a little banged up. Um, maybe it's Saquon isn't playing, or maybe Saquon fumbles. Feels like he didn't fumble last year at all. Maybe an offensive lineman's a little banged up. We know the O line gets a little banged up. Um, it looks like Brian Flores cooking up some demon scheme that, puts the Eagles in hell. It looks like Justin Jefferson kind of torching Keely Ringo. And, it's one of those like Ringo's playing good all year,
What if
hasn't
Howell's the quarterback this day?
he won't be. It won't be. It looks like a blow up against Jefferson, and then Ringo plays well the rest of the year. It's one of those like, oh, Jefferson had 1 catch for 9 yards against Quinyon Mitchell, but he had 8 catches for 112 yards and 2 touchdowns against Keely Ringo, like that sort of thing. And people are like, should we have Quinyon Mitchell follow around the number? Like that's a whole conversation for a week. That's really tiring. But ultimately, I decided against all of that. And I'm like, you know what? They're not losing to JJ McCarthy. I don't care how much of the quarterback whisperer Kevin O'Connell is. I think Vic Fangio is going to have a good time against McCarthy, and the pass rush is going to cause them issues, and they'll be able to run the ball enough against Minnesota. So I'm having this as a win. And even if they lose, I talked myself into it won't matter. It's a Sunday in October that like I'm banking on the Phillies are
Well,
playing a playoff game later that night.
we still have to internally do our teams that made the playoffs the prior year, missed the playoffs the next year. The
Yeah.
Vikings seem like the Vikings are a weird team. Like their roster itself is built very well. They have very good coaching. But damn, Michael, they are the Minnesota Vikings. So like they're either extremely unlucky or bad quarterback play holds them back from success.
Right. Oh.
And I just feel like I was watching like OTAs of the Vikings, and they're like, look at this JJ McCarthy throw. Like they're one of their fans, and it was so average, Michael. I'm like, it was so average, and I was
Yeah.
like thinking like he's definitely like a bottom 10 starting quarterback. Like when we're gonna do the tier list, it's gonna be interesting. And if
Hmm.
when we have a chance, we're gonna do our tier lists, but like at least Darnold had like arm talent. Like he was a third overall pick.
Yeah.
He just has like no mental acumen to play quarterback or mental fortitude.
Yeah. We'll see what JJ's got this year. So you're having this as a win?
Yeah, I'm gonna have this as a win.
Okay. Which then takes us to the second Giants game. Once again, the Eagles having to do both division games in a 3-week span. They actually have to do that twice this year. How absurd that is. I'm having them sweep the Giants. Yeah, definitely winning this
This is
one at
gonna be a win
home.
for the Eagles. This is gonna be a blow. This is gonna be like after like losing,
Bludgeoning.
like exactly after listening to like basketball starting back up. Their fans are gonna be acting like Jalen. They're gonna be like Jalen Hurts sucks. Jalen Hurts blows. Duh,
So
duh, 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 duh. They're gonna get their asses like literally. They're gonna get filleted in this game.
so that puts us at the bye where the Eagles are, for me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-2. And you have the Eagles at the bye also at 6-2. Looks a little different, but ultimately 6 wins and 2 losses at the bye. Sitting pretty, I would say. 6-2 through 8 weeks. Okay. Coming out of the bye, the big one. The the hate the I don't know. The Green Bay Packers Monday night on the road. This is another one of those games that you can't lose by any means necessary. You cannot lose to the Packers after all the nonsense in the offseason and all the crap. Even if they were put up as the puppet because they don't have an owner, doesn't matter. It's still them. You can't lose at all. So I have this one as a win. And I think the Eagles are gonna like, they are very much business oriented in their minds. They don't let a lot of the outside noise affect them. They use it as some motivation, but they don't let it really bleed in too much. However, I think this will be one where it's like, you know what, F them. Like we're gonna make sure that we beat them. Like they might run the tush push to open up the game, sort of thing. Like just to do it.
Yeah, I
First,
would agree with
first and
that.
10. Let's pick up
Yeah,
2 yards.
yeah. My concern with this is I feel like we've beaten the Packers a lot recently. After the Packers always under Aaron Rodgers always felt like they got the better of the Eagles. Maybe maybe that's just an Aaron Rodgers thing. You know, um,
Probably the last time the Eagles
I
lost
I
to
do
Green
feel like the
Bay.
Packers might finish in last place in the
Dude,
NFC.
when was the last time the Eagles lost to the Packers?
So in
2016?
2020,
Did we play Green Bay in 2020? Oh shit, yeah, yeah,
that's
in
when
Green
Jalen
Bay.
Hurts made us. Was that his first? Did he come in relief
He
for
came in relief.
Carson because they were getting
Yeah,
blown out?
he came in relief. So 2020. But before that, it was like
So the Packers
2016.
are partially responsible for Jalen Hurts being the Eagles
Since
starting quarterback.
2019, the Eagles are 3, 4-1, including the playoffs since 2019 against the Packers. No, 5-1, 5-1. How about that? I think. I don't know. Anyways, so you have them winning as well. This is a tough stretch here after the bye. So they're at Green Bay on Monday night, and then they come back home on Sunday night to play the Detroit Lions, the matchup that everyone wanted to see apparently in the NFC Championship game, and they're saving it, hoping both teams are going to be good in November and all that sort of stuff. Whatever. This is another one where Eagles can't lose. I hate the Lions. I hate their fans. I hate their
You hate
arrogance.
their
And
fans.
yes,
Why
their
do you hate
fans
their
act
fans?
because their fans act like they've done something. Their fans act like they're so mighty or whatever. It's like, oh, you don't want to see us. Yeah, what do you mean I don't want to see you guys? What the hell are you talking about? I would
Yeah,
love to see you
if
guys.
you're a Lions fan, like I don't know, like I
I
don't.
see them talking a lot of trash, man. The love fest they get from the league, and Dan Campbell is such a great coach, but Nick Sirianni doesn't do anything like that. Bothers me. What does Dan Campbell do that Nick Sirianni doesn't
Well, the
do?
Lions. So this is an interesting thing, Michael. Is no one's talked about this. We talk about
They're
teams
they lost both
playoffs.
coordinators, man. Like,
You saw how much it affected the Eagles. But when you also look at the Lions, they added DJ Reed. He's going to be their number one corner, I would imagine. Right
Lions have flaws for
after
sure.
being the number two corner with the Jets, still really good.
Yeah,
Throwing out a lot. He could be a good number one corner, but
we'll
like you
see.
said, new coordinator, Aiden Hutchinson, no clue what we're going to get from him this year. He looks like he lost a step in a lot of his like rehab videos. His injury was very serious. He may need another year to just
Yeah,
like get right.
yeah.
So I don't think we're seeing a 20 sack season. It might be like 8, 9, 10.
We'll see. We will
You
see.
know,
I think it's they lost both coordinators. I think that's a huge deal, and we'll see if they're able to bounce back with that. Because honestly, if
I'm
they
taking
don't,
the Eagles in this game, Michael. I think this is where we're going to see like
this
maybe.
is the chatter is going to start building up
Well, no, I
again.
think we're going to see maybe like Goff throw like 4 picks because it's a big game and like we know how he is and when he gets under duress.
Yeah, and if the Eagles can swarm them and stuff for sure. This is I'll be that'll be a huge telling. See how that looks with Dan Campbell and stuff. This is a big year for the Lions, I think, with both coordinators leaving. Like if they have a down season, um, and maybe don't miss the playoffs, but like they're a wild card and get bounced early or something, I think we'll have to stop having erroneous conversations about Dan Campbell, who hasn't won anything, and really has only had 1 year of success. Like I think we really need to pump the brakes, dude. 2 years, I guess. 2 years of success. Okay, at the Dallas Cowboys. I actually have this one as a loss.
I
I
had it
was
as a
thinking
loss as
about it a lot. It was just coming off those two previous games. It's a really hard 3-game stretch. And granted, last year they swept the really hard 3-game stretch against the Commanders, Rams, and Ravens. But this just feels like there's more animosity in it. Even though the Eagles and Lions haven't played when they were both really good, it still feels like there's a lot of tension there. Obviously, we know there's a lot of tension in that Packer game, and then the Cowboys, of course. Those are 3 heavily emotional games that are gonna mean a lot, and I think that's just gonna be a tough spot to go on the road after the home Sunday night Lions game to keep that win streak kinda going. So I have them dropping this one here, as do you.
I have that as a loss.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I think it's split with the Cowboys, not the end of the world, you're not losing the one at home, so if you're gonna split, you're losing the one out there. Don't think it's the end of the world. Okay. Next game, Friday night, Friday afternoon, I should say, Black Friday. Eagles versus the Chicago Bears. Now this is an interesting one. I'm gonna have it as a win, but I, I guess I won't be able to know how I feel truly about it until I watch the Bears play. There's a lot of big sweeping changes that they made with the coaching staff, and Ben Johnson here. We'll see if Ben Johnson can actually be this, he was this top heralded genius coach mind that was the most coveted coordinator to be a head coach maybe in the history of the NFL. And like, if he has got it, like they say he's got it, the Bears could be really, really, really good this year. And I
what did
think
you
we'll have
think
to just
about
wait and
Ben
see.
Johnson saying he wants to see? Was this true that Ben Johnson said he wanted Caleb Williams to have better body language?
Yeah, not for nothing. I clicked on that article and read it, and that was such a misleading title,
That's
or
what I
like
thought.
they made it sound like in OTAs, he, like, watched Roma Dunze drop a pass, and he, like, slammed his helmet and, like, told him to go F himself, when all was it was in reference to them watching film and stuff last year, and when Caleb would, like, kinda throw his head back and look a little upset on the bench, like, I think it was just like, "Listen, man, like, when things
That's
aren't
what I
going
thought it
right,
was. Like
I
when
don't want you showing that, Like, I
basic.
know
I
you're an
think
emotional guy, wear your emotions on your sleeve, but I think, sometimes in a game when things are tight, if it's not going right, you kinda gotta lock in. You can't let like, very normal, like, don't let the other team see how you're feeling sorta stuff. Really not a big deal, like, at all, especially for a second-year quarterback. So, the fact that it was written in that way in the headline was so misleading.
right. Like I thought it was more or less like when he was like on the sidelines going like this.
Yes, when it's like, "Yeah, I'm in literal hell with Eberflus and Shane Waldron
Yeah,
right
I think
now."
that was Ben Johnson saying, "Hey, you don't have to worry about that anymore."
Like, don't have to worry about it, but, like, let's if we're in a tight game and you throw a pick, and even if it's a terrible pick, like the worst ever,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
fine. Like, don't beat yourself up over it on the sideline, like, where everybody can see.
I think it's going to be that's. I think the Eagles Bears game will be a very close game.
Yeah.
I still think the Bears, though,
They're missing a little bit.
they
They
can't run
need
the
the running
ball.
game better.
They can't
Yeah.
run the ball, and they can't stop the run.
That's what I'm really intrigued about with the Bears is the whole Ben Johnson scheme. As great as it is,
It's
it's
dependent on the run.
run focused. It's run centered. And granted, maybe he has a pass centered scheme like cooked up that he just didn't do with the Lions because he
Well,
had Goff
that's
and
the
the running
thing
back
with
room.
like
So
Kevin O'Connell, McVay, and Ben Johnson. Even McDaniel, everyone heralds them for their passing schemes. They're all dependent on the run.
I run first. Yeah.
If they can't run the ball, the quarterback's in trouble because a lot of the misdirections don't really have the same effect
And I guess the
if there's no
difference
threat of the run.
and I guess the difference this time around, and you saw the difference with McVay, was that when he got Stafford, when you get a great quarterback, then it takes pressure off the run game. When the Rams won the Super Bowl, they weren't they ran the ball well, but it's like Cooper Cup on the Triple Crown. Like it wasn't like they had some 1,500-yard rusher on the team that was like
Dan
totally
Odell.
dominant. Yeah, I think so the difference, I guess, in their hopes would be okay, we can't run the ball as well as we did in Detroit, but if Caleb Williams is as good as he's supposed to be, they can get away with that. So we both have it as a win. I do think we'll know a lot more about the Bears by that time, and if we'll be more scared of that game than maybe we are at the moment. Which takes us out west to the Chargers for Monday Night Football. I have this one as a win. It's a little tentative because I think it could be a little weird spot, but I do think this one's a win. I think this is a big one for I think there's a little narrative chatter surrounding this game as well. It'll depend on how, how good a Jim Harbaugh-led team is in the second year. We saw they made some strides, in some regards, but they still fell flat on their faces in the playoffs. They kind of addressed the running back room through the draft, um, with Amari and Hampton. I really don't like what their receiver room looks like. I don't think they made anything really notable. They brought back Mike Williams. I don't know.
Did they
But we'll
did they
see.
re-sign Keenan Allen?
I don't think they did yet, right? Is he still a free agent?
Well, J.K. Dobbins is still a free agent as well.
Yeah, so there's some bodies out there, but I don't know. We'll see. I have this one as a win, though. I don't know. The Eagles are just a lot better than the Chargers in my eyes. Like a
Well,
lot better.
when we do the quarterback tier list, I don't
I think we
think
can do a ranking, like that. The
ranking.
Stay Hot
I
podcast
can't.
has
So
like
my
that
thing.
ranking format.
So I think quarterbacks when they play other great teams, I feel like whenever Herbert plays a great team or in a game where this is a big game, in the especially as a pro, I feel like he just shrinks. Like he can't handle the moment.
He shrinks. Yeah, yeah. And even games that he plays well in them, it's like just one too many mistakes that are a little uncharacteristic. That'll really
Oh, like
tank you.
throwing 4 picks against the Texans, that Texans team that was like dead on arrival entering
Well,
the
I'll
playoffs.
even go back further to the Jags game where, a lot of people, and me included, I tend to not give him as much blame. I blame like the play calling decision. You're up 27 nothing at half and you don't really run the ball at all in the second half. And it's like you're putting a lot of pressure on your quarterback to just make throws consistently to move the sticks and milk the clock. And, you know, there's not many quarterbacks that can do that. And he came up small where maybe if it was in October against the Titans, maybe he nails all those throws. But it was a playoff game and it was a little sweaty and he missed a few of the throws and they punted and the turnovers and whatever, and then you lost and everything was terrible. So yeah, I think that Monday night against the Eagles, that's a pretty sizable stage. Week 13, yeah, week 13, 14. Sorry. So all right, we both have that as a win, which then takes us. They will go back home and take on Geno Smith and the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, this was like pretty much a guaranteed win. They got Geno Smith, and they drafted Genty, and the Raiders are a little frisky, man. I think the Raiders are not going to be some like schlub bottom feeder garbage team. Like I think there's a shout that the Raiders could win like 7, 8 games in that tough division. Like
Yeah, I think their offense is going to put up numbers with Bowers, Genty, Geno Smith. I don't
yeah,
know, maybe like a receiver on their team breaks out
sure.
as
I'm
well.
looking at this game as a potential game that Jalen Hurts actually misses. I still think they can win. I do have this as a win for the Eagles, but it's like we know Jalen gets a little banged up every year. It's always something.
It's always
Always a
this
little
time of year.
Always this time of year, and I'm thinking maybe Monday night against the Chargers, he gets a little banged up, and they're like, "You know what? He's not playing against the Raiders because the Commander game's the following week." Or they like very run heavy and quick passes, and Jalen's not really involved. Something like that. I still think they win, but I think this is a potential Jalen misses game and is back for the Commander game. But I do have it as a win regardless at home.
I had this as a win as well.
Yeah. Which takes us to what could be the biggest game of the year, week 16 on the road against the Washington Commanders. Now, this is once again the start of a both division games in a 3-week stretch, which very dumb scheduling in my eyes from the NFL because to me, I feel as though the first game is the only one that's going to matter between the two. I think it's one of those games where if the Eagles win, they clinch the division and it's over. And like by the time week 18 rolls around, they won't need to play their starters. And if it's like it goes both ways, I guess. So this game, I actually have the Eagles winning. I think that there's a lot of A lot of Commander fans, we talk about fans that don't know how to act when their team is good. Commander
Them,
fans are
yes.
definitely them, and they really hold a lot of water on that Eagles game where Jaden Daniels had 4 turnovers, but they still won because Jalen wasn't playing, and, CJ got hurt or got kicked out, actually. Um, lot of issues that went down in that game that the Eagles still should have won despite all that, but Devonta Smith dropped a pass, and he never drops a pass. So, after
Do
all the
you
garbage,
do
they
you do
still should have won.
you put any stock into Commander's regression this year?
Yeah, for sure. I think yes, like 100%. I think the Commanders made a lot of moves to try to, like, immediately get better. I think Debo's, like, an actual pretty decent fit for what they wanna do with him, but we'll see how that all plays out. I think Jaden Daniels can just get hit with a sophomore slump. Maybe doesn't, like, struggle as badly as maybe Stroud did, but it's like, Jaden Daniels is playing at, like, a
Why
top
not?
5 level. Maybe you're right. Maybe why not is right. I don't love their running back room, and I think an improvement there could have been a lot more beneficial to preventing said sophomore slump for Jaden Daniels. I think they got a great year out of Zach Ertz last year, which maybe he puts together another great one, but again, he's only getting older, so maybe he doesn't have as good of a year. They won a lot of games on some last minute, last second heroics. Obviously, the Hail Mary being the infamous one. The last drive against the Eagles, they had a handful of last second drives against the Saints, if I'm remembering correctly. They had a lot of them. And I just think that they caught a lot of breaks last year where they might not have as many breaks. I'm not to say they're going to win 6 games or 7 games or something like that, but maybe they win like
The
9 or
way they're built,
10.
they're a 9-10 win team. If you look at their
Right.
offseason, they all kept claiming they were going to make these massive moves to really sort of like when the Eagles did in the 2022 offseason to set themselves up for the run they're in now, right?
Yeah.
Like like Michael, like Debo Samuel was one of the worst wide receivers last year in getting separation. And it's not like Kyle Shanahan forgot how to draw up schemes.
No, it's not.
And Laramie Tunsil, despite being a borderline Hall of Fame tackle, had the worst year of his career last year with the Texans.
They took a lot of penalties. He led the league in penalties.
And listen, I'm not saying that Cliff Kingsbury can't figure it out, but Michael, let's not let's not just have a sense of revisionist history. No one was exactly talking about Cliff Kingsbury a few years ago like he was this offensive mastermind.
No, not at all. He did a great job last year, Kingsbury, at making Jaden Daniels' job pretty easy. Very short, like depth to target for most of the year, a lot of screens, a lot of whatever, and then he
But this
eventually
is where I think you could
opened it
see
up.
the regression of Jaden Daniels is that teams now that are cued onto this, especially
Hmm.
in the NFL, if you're like limited, they figure you out and they figure you
Sure.
out very quickly. And I'm not saying, and listen, I think Jaden Daniels has the arm talent to like break through this, but every quarterback, you've seen it, Michael, has some sort of like growing pains. Like CJ Stroud had those growing pains last year. Like we
Hmm.
can blame, they could like they can just blame Bobby Slowick 100% all the way for it, and he deserves a big portion of that blame.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's still on the quarterback to make those to
There's
execute
sophomore slump. It's
to
all.
execute.
Yeah.
So and like Terry McLaurin still really good, but I didn't realize how old he was.
He's already over 30. So,
And I could
so
see
all
the
this to
Commanders
say
having a
they're
lot of.
going to
I could
win.
see them having a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
They don't get all of the breaks they got last year. I'm gonna have this as a win.
Yeah.
I
Me
had this
too.
as a win. Now,
Which. takes us to Buffalo. So they're at the Bills, 4:30 Romo game, big game. Um, I think that the Eagles are going to win. Actually, the Bills are the Eagles are the only team that Josh Allen hasn't beaten, and they have been talking a lot about the tush push and a lot of other things, and very hypocritical. And I just think that the Eagles are better. I think they'll be able to run the ball in Buffalo and be able to just kind of handle what Josh Allen throws at them in a similar way to what they sort of did to Jaden Daniels. We're like, listen, Josh Allen's going to get his. He's going to make plays or whatever. But, you stay disciplined. You get a pass rush to get guys in his face immediately. That can be detrimental. Granted, this is all the way in December. So, we'll see how it pans out. But I do have the Eagles winning this game against Buffalo.
So Josh Allen in his career at home in the month of December is 11-4.
He's very good.
I had this. I'm going to have this as a loss for the Eagles because I'm not saying they can't win this game in Buffalo, but man, especially lately, Michael, like Josh Allen at home in December,
It's good.
that's a tough place to play
Hmm.
unless you're the Kansas City Chiefs and it's the playoffs.
Yeah.
But that's in January, not December, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so like this is good. That's going to be like their Super Bowl. That's going to be like their big thing because I don't know because on one hand, like there's going to be a power vacuum in the AFC where I think it's going to be more wide open
Hmm.
next year than it's ever been under the Chiefs, like the iron fist of the Kansas City Chiefs, I suppose. But yeah, like I can't like you. I know you want them to win because of the whole tush push nonsense, and I get it too. Let me ask you this though about the Bills. Like
I don't think they're gonna stop.
the
I
Bills
think
have
they're gonna
like
have trouble
seven
stopping the
number
Eagles.
three receivers on their team.
Right. Like I think they're gonna have some trouble getting open. I think it's gonna be a lot of Josh Allen hero ball to pull them together if they're gonna win a game.
You think it's going to be if the Eagles win, it's going to be like a Josh Allen turnover fest since he's led the NFL in turnovers like the last 4 years by a significant
Maybe,
margin.
maybe a couple. Yeah. Um, and then that takes us to week 18 that I have as a loss as the Eagles will be resting their starters.
Wow.
And they go to 13-4 and are the top seed in the NFC.
Yeah, I'll put this as a oh God, am I snare? I have the Eagles losing two straight games going into a potential playoffs.
They'd be 12-5.
Yeah, I'll have that as a loss. I'll have it
As
as
they
a
win the
loss.
division,
They're going to win the division. I think they'll
mm,
break the curse
break
of
the
the 20.
curse.
I think they'll break the curse, winning 12 games,
Second
and
in the
but they
NFC.
have to play the following week, and then I think people are going to start panicking because people are going to want them to play their starters against the Commanders because they don't want them to just rest them, and then they have to draw like the Vikings in a potential rematch of a
Yeah.
regular season game, or
Yeah.
maybe even the Rams. Like, did you see that the Niners have the second highest win total in the NFC this year,
Hmm.
tied for second with the Detroit Lions at 10.5.
Wow.
They could be Eagles Niners wild card weekend.
Yeah. Huh. Well, that's it. So I have them at 13-4, first in the NFC. You have them at 12-5, second in the NFC. Both would be very respectable, very good seasons following a Super Bowl victory. Anything that's not like 10-7 or 9-8 would be pretty good in my eyes. As that, listen, they have the toughest schedule in the league. The only team that has it harder is like the Giants, and that's because they play us instead of we play them. So Yeah, it's a pretty tough schedule, so anything that would be like, when they won the Super Bowl the first time, and we were just so over the moon that, we're looking at 2018 like, "Oh, Wentz will be back, and they're gonna run it again. They're gonna kill. They're gonna be great." And it was like, the more we look back on that team, the 2017 team, the more that we see that it was like there really was some like Eagles devil magic they had kind of cooking. Nick Foles on the two
It was
game
definitely
heater.
lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, you look at Nelson Aguilar putting together his best season as a pro, coming off some like you know some of the worst seasons we've ever seen. Alshon putting together another really good season. A lot of good things that just went the Eagles' way, despite the fact of all the things that didn't go their way with all the injuries. But a big thing that I think was important to look at is that in 2016, the Eagles went 7-9 and finished fourth. When you're going 7-9 and get a fourth place schedule, like that's usually a good sign for the next year that you are getting a last place schedule and you weren't that bad the previous year. Like they went 7-9, and what did they have to lose? Like 8 games in a row, and they choked away a couple that like they were 7-9 and
Yeah,
could have
their
been ten
toughest
and
games in
six. Like
2017, their toughest games that I thought, which they both lost, by the way, their toughest games that I thought were at Kansas City week 2,
yeah,
and then
at
like week
Seattle.
at Seattle, like was that like week 12 that broke their win streak they had.
And then the following week they had to go play at the Rams, which was their other really tough game that they won. And they had like 3 really, really tough games. And
They only won
You
one of them.
know, maybe that Thursday night game against Carolina, that was a pretty pivotal game that I think made people be like, "Oh, the Eagles are pretty good." Like,
Yeah,
that
and,
was
and even their playoff run, in the playoffs, they play the Falcons. Like the Falcons self-destructed against the
Eagles
Eagles.
did not play well. Like, the Eagles should not have won that game. Nick Foles did not play well. They should have lost a wild card or the divisional round. Like, it's just, kinda they should have. Keanu Neal need a football. Could have been a pick six, and it turned into a field goal at the end of the half for the Eagles. It's a huge swing there. Um, but granted, like we said, lightning in a bottle, maybe some fluke. Anyways, all that being said, is that we were so excited for the following season, and they rolled out a 9-7, grinded out, barely made the playoffs sort of year because they were playing a first place schedule, and maybe they weren't as good as we thought they were to begin with. Where this year, it's different, where they had a second place schedule. They dominated pretty much the whole year after the beginning, dominated their way through the playoffs into the Super Bowl win. And they're going to play a first place harder schedule this year when we thought last year's schedule was really hard too. It's much harder this year, but
I feel like this team, when they play tougher opponents, they get more
they
locked
rise up.
in.
But it's
Where
also their roster is so much better, so much more well equipped to actually, like we talked about before, this team, this era of Eagles football is a lot more equipped to have sustainable championship level contending success year in and year out. Where the 2017 team, like you said, lightning in a bottle.
yeah, I do think though for this upcoming season,
Mm.
I do think that because there's so much Eagle hate, like there's Kansas City hate, that if there's any kind of early stumble, it's going to kind of galvanize them because that's what the elite teams do. Like, dude, I remember, I forget, it might have been like 2014 or 2015. The Patriots were like 0-2, and they got like blown out, or they got blown out like week 1 by Kansas City. It might have been 2017, I think. And like they were talking about Brady, like he's washed up, they're done, blah, 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 blah. And then they won the Super Bowl. Like
Oh, the
that's
year they beat
the
the
Falcons.
yes. Yeah. Hold on, I want to find it. It was actually the year they went to the Super Bowl and lost to the Eagles.
Oh, really?
They
Okay.
were coming off the uh they were coming off the beating Atlanta, and they played the Chiefs and lost 42-27. and then they went and railed the Saints. And then they just yeah. They had some absurd games that season, just looking back on it. Beat the Saints 36-20, beat the Texans 36-33, lost to the Panthers 33-30. Oh my god.
No,
That
that was a
defense
devil
did
magic
suck.
team. That's why I liked the Eagles in the Super Bowl because I thought they had a better roster.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
it played out how it played out. Well, last thing, and then we'll end this show though. If they, do you think this is because of the schedule that they're a 10-win team because of the difficulty of it?
If they win 10 games,
Go 10-7. Would
am
you
I
be?
like if they go 10 games, I'd be upset. I don't think they should lose 7 games. That's more so like I can very easily see them losing 4 and 5 games,
I think
and
my
you can
concern when I was
like, if they
picking
lose
this
7,
game,
I would assume there's injuries.
I think my concern was Kevin Patullo as the offensive coordinator. I know Jalen Hurts has had like a different play caller like every year going back to college. Like this is nothing different for him.
I think at the worst, they should know that at the very least, it should really be run heavy, and even if there's, like, badness in the other aspects of the offense, if you're run heavy enough, and this is where the injury factor comes in, as long as Saquon and the offensive line and stuff are healthy, I just don't think they'll be bad enough to lose 7 games.
I mean, what did you
That's
think
my
of
thought.
Shady McCoy? Do you think Shady McCoy's just talk was lying when he claimed that AJ Brown told him this is the Jalen Hurts show? It doesn't really matter who the play caller is. In other words, like when Tom Brady was on the Patriots, he's had a ton of different play callers. You know,
Well, I mean, when he said it the way he said it, first of all, Shady talks too much, but if he the way I'm thinking about it is that it's like, they do the offense that's best suited for Jalen, and it's like, I I feel like that's kind of what you're supposed to do. I don't know, you're supposed to build your offense that's best suited around your quarterback, and if it's the Jalen show and the Jalen show means you're a run first team and you run like quick hitting RPOs and you run, quick slants and you run go balls to your best players and you run like those deep crossers to Goddard, like then by all means, let's keep running the Jalen Hurts show. Like, I don't know. Like what are we talking about here? You know what I'm saying? Like if that's what it is, then feed me that. That's what this team's formula should be then, if that's, you know, the best we can do. We talk about it all the time that, oh, the passing game could be a lot more dynamic, but it's like it doesn't need to be, and maybe hopefully they have it in their sleeve if they need it to be, but it doesn't. So I think if they lose 7 games, and I think they're going to be banged up this year anyways, because they were banged up last year. It was more so early in the season, then they kind of got healthy as the year went on. Where this year it might be a bit of the opposite. They kind of get banged up middle towards the end of the year, and you just hope that the guys are healthy when you need them to be healthy. Listen, AJ Brown was not healthy when the playoffs started. I think that gets forgotten as well.
AJ
He
Brown
was
wasn't healthy to start the season. Remember, he went to Brazil. He looked a little ginger, and he missed a couple weeks to start
Yeah,
the
he
year.
missed a couple games, but then he was also hurt at the start of the playoffs. Like, I think people forget that Packer game. He was legitimately like, he just wasn't very fast. They ran that fake tush push, and he was open, and he just couldn't really catch up to the ball because he was hurt. And like he had that drop against the Rams, and maybe it's because of the snow, maybe it's because he was feeling a little uncomfortable. I don't know, but then he exploded the next 2 weeks because he was healthy. So, they weren't 100% entering the play. They were held, they were
Did you
playing, but
see
they
his
weren't fully
workout
healthy.
video
So
where he was in like a gym and like some like exclusive
yeah,
gym?
he's a freak. Yeah, he's incredible.
Yeah,
I am so
yeah,
happy he's here. I love that guy, man.
I
He
I
is
think that I
awesome.
think the vibe is way different right now than it was after 2017. Like the vibe I'm kind of getting this
The
year.
vibe, we were so blissful, and it was like, yeah, we're gonna beat everybody again. We're gonna be great.
I feel like the vibe this year is like now I think their focus is like yeah, teams win the Super Bowl. Like, why don't we have a dynasty? What do we
Yes,
need
it's
to
like,
do
I was
to build
thinking
a
it's
dynasty?
similar to like a boxer or like a MMA fighter vibe where it's like when you win the belt, you wanna keep it. You know, you wanna it's not like you win it and you go off into the sunset. It's like you win it and it's like now I need to fight again to defend it and defend it again and defend it again. And it's like I think they're viewing it as like we have the belt. We are going to defend it against everybody else because we're just better than everybody else. And I think that it's a much more kill mentality. You know, people like AJ Brown said, like, "Oh, you know, I celebrated. It was great, but I was ready to get back to work." And like that's everybody's kind of mentality on the team. And I think that's a great mentality to have that they get their joy from just beating the other opponents as opposed to just winning the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? They get the joy from the act of what it's like to beat somebody as opposed to just the celebration after the fact. And that's how you build a machine. And that's what I think they have here. So yeah,
Anyway,
that's our
that's our
show,
show.
everybody.
That's our show, everybody. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And yeah, Knicks Pacers is going to be a good game.
Bills
You
are
know,
at 4 today, so
those are at 4 o'clock today. So yeah, everybody take
Luzardo,
care.
go watch some masterful pitching and have
Yeah,
a good
there
one.
you go. Take it easy, everybody.
We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts like the P-Lot Pod, Water Cooler Talk, Bell Smashers, Philly Sports Love and Pain, Drunk on Broad, Beer Battered Sports, and the Fired Up Sports Show, which are available on all major podcasting hosting sites and social media. Also, check out Mark Ramos' Roundup on firedupsports.com, which breaks down the happenings going on with all your favorite local teams.